So now we've got all the camo pattern done, so let's just have a look. Hopefully, as you can see, looking rather cool now. Now the thing is, I've gone off and done the rest of this actually freehand, because I thought actually it'd be a nice way of sort of showing you guys the differences between doing masking and freehand. So let's just bring you in on a little example area. Right, what we have here is the NATO brown I did. Oh, hold on. The compressor's on. NATO brown here. Right, we've done it masked, and as you can see, we've got a really nice sharp edge to it. Now I've done the NATO black with freehand, which, as you could probably see, it's looking a little bit feathered, right? And this is kind of like personal preference and depending on the model and the actual real life thing, right? You know, I mean, some aircrafts and armored vehicles, they sort of sprayed on, so they've got a feathered edge to it. Some of them are like a nice sharp edge, so it kind of depends on the model, as well as, you know, you can bring in things like scale effect, right? Scale effect, you know, if you're nose to nose with this tank, it might be a nice sharp edge to it. But when you think about scale effect, if you're 200 meters away, say, details start to get less detailed and a bit fuzzy, and so, you know, you could be looking at a camo pattern from 200 meters away and it looks a bit feathered, whereas if you're nose to nose, as I say, it could be nice and sharp. So there's lots of ways to go about it. It all kind of depends on your personal preference and how you want to go about it, as well as, you know, the scale of the model. You know, if it's something like 1/72nd scale, you may sort of want to go for the feathered edge to kind of represent the scale effect. If you've got like an even bigger scale sort of tank, you could be really sort of going, it needs to be a sharp edge because it's bigger scaled. It's kind of being perceived that you're closer to the tank. So that's a few things, but I don't mind sort of doing my model two different ones because, you know, I'm sort of trying to show you the differences. Now here's the thing, now if you mask it, right, when it comes to stuff like bleaching, right, you could just do your bleaching and you should be fine. But I've gone off and I have finished the rest of this model in freehand, so we've got no masking on here. So to do the bleaching, the problem is what we have here is now we could spray the bleaching on and it could go over into, say, the NATO green, or go in over onto the NATO black, or kind of not get the area that you want. So we're going to have to sort of again go freehand. We're going to have to be trying sort of be precise with our bleaching, and there is potential for mistakes. Now at this stage, right, I would, you know, again, you know, always good to save your work. I would like to sort of get this, you know, get out some of our gloss, put maybe 2 light coats on there just to protect it, so that when we do our bleaching, if we do make a mistake, we can get out the cotton wool buds and quickly wipe up any areas where we've sort of gone over here or there, but we'll get it nicely sort of sealed in there. One last thing I did forget before we actually sealed this in is when we do it freehand, if I just get us set up here, right, if you sort of make slight mistakes or maybe a pattern's not quite looking right, I've just done the NATO brown, I've done the NATO black, but there's no harm in coming back and sort of, let's get out good old NATO green. I'm looking at this little area here and I'm kind of thinking this bit's kind of looking a bit too feathered, say, you know, coming back in with another colour to then sort of actually bring us back our sharp, well, as sharp as edges we can get with freehand. So I'm just gonna sort of get a kitchen paper towel out. I want to sort of get my biting point before I start spraying, so I'm just spraying a bit, getting my biting point, and then hopefully we can just come in and get a nice edge here where I didn't quite like it. Now it's a bit hard to sort of do this on camera. Trying to get my biting point, coming in close, using all those normal techniques, and then getting that nicely sort of in there. Right, now what you're probably seeing now, this might look a little bit like, oh, you know, that doesn't look quite right. Just remember, you know, the gloss coats, as you can see, really does make a difference. You know, we've sprayed that on there to make that look a little bit sort of sharper, and we've got like a lighter version of NATO green and a darker version of NATO green. That's just the gloss. When we gloss over that, that will sort of blend in just like the rest of the NATO green, so don't worry about that. And you probably have that kind of thing going on if you did NATO brown or NATO black, you know, don't worry about that. But I've got that sort of nicely sort of a bit sort of sharper there than what it was before, and I've sort of done that here and there all over the place, sort of like, you know, don't quite like that, you know, fill it in with another colour. Even if you have to get out NATO brown or NATO black, just kind of bring it all together looking sort of all nice, and that should get all your sort of little mistakes and maybe not quite the camo pattern you want, and you can maneuver it back, absolutely no problem doing those kind of things, and kind of adds to the flavour of weathering as well. So with that all nicely glossed in, I did get out the NATO brown. I did sort of, you know, as you know, when you've kind of glossed things over, you notice, oh no, I've missed some little bits here and there. So you could probably see the, you know, that looking a bit matte there, whereas it's a bit glossy around it. Just missed that, those bits out. Then I've sort of gone off, you know, as you can see, I've got NATO brown in here. We don't need all that when we did the buff. You know, it's pretty much the same as when we did the NATO green, right? So I'm just getting rid of a load of this paint because we don't need loads of it, right? And then what we're going to do, we're going to add again a little bit of thinners. We want sort of like about an 80% thinners to paint ratio here. So I'm just adding a nice bit of that, and then we're going to go off and get some XF2, which is white. And what we're going to do, we're going to lighten our colour that we have just here. So I'm just adding some of that to the mix, right, just to lighten it up that little bit. Right, maybe just a little bit more white. Right, and we should have, hopefully as you can see now, a nicer, lighter version of NATO brown, just to do our bleaching. Alright, I'm just cleaning that off. Right, and what we want to do again, you know, remember there's a reservoir, a little tiny little bit of paint that's in our little reservoir just here, so we want to blast that through. Let's just move this out the way, blast it through until we see that lighter shade come through. Right, now again, because I've done this freehand, right, we've got that little bit of a problem, as I've already mentioned, where we don't want it going over onto NATO black or NATO green. Right, so again, we're going to come in, get our biting point, right, and we're just going to do that nice mottled effect. Right, so I'm just going to go on the flat surfaces, give it a bit of a mottled effect, just like so. And what I'm trying to do is not sort of go over onto any of those areas. So you can see that's got that in there. Now, just in case, right, just in case, I'll just do it just here. Oh, I've sort of accidentally got a bit on our NATO green. Right, again, the cotton wool buds, because we've sealed it in with a gloss coat, it saves our work. Cotton wool bud, while this is still wet, our NATO brown, we should be able to wipe that up. Right, but we're not going to wipe anything else up because our gloss coat has protected everything else. Our gloss coat has nicely had time to dry, so all we're going to wipe up is that NATO brown, and that's plain and simply it when it comes to doing it freehand, because we haven't got the masking it isn't all masked up. So because we've got that potential mistaking of going over onto NATO green or NATO black, you know, it's just nice and easy. Seal it in with a gloss coat and we can wipe it up with a cotton wool bud. So I'm just going to go round and do all our NATO brown bits just here. Right, doing the figure of eights, Tetris shapes, making it look all mottled like so. And as you can see, you know, that might be sort of, again, you know, a bit too much in your face, maybe, you know, too much coming to the foreground. But as you know, you put your gloss coats on and all your weathering and all those kind of things, it's going to knock it back. It's going to feather everything in and sort of blend everything all in, right? So that's going to get knocked back quite a bit. So always go that little bit more than what you want. And then I'm just going to do the same with NATO black. I might seal it in with a gloss coat. Again, it's always good to seal it in with a gloss coat, but really, I suppose, really want to do some post shading on this, so we may as well kind of, you know, go on, do all that kind of stuff, maybe a bit of painting, because we've still got to like paint shovels and towing eyes and all those kind of things. We might just kind of do a final gloss coat at the end, ready for deckling.